What's up, everyone? My next guest has been working in the tech industry for over 20 years. She's the founder of Nedrock, which is a product management and lean training consultancy, and she's about to run a product management course through Gibbs Business School. Annu Augustine, welcome to the Mastercast. It's really good to have you with us.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks for inviting me to your podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So today, the whole idea to chat to you today was about customer interviews. But I thought let's just dive into a bit of product management, because I think there's a question mark around there, and I think the role itself is busy growing. I'm hearing more about it. So it's definitely a position people are opening their eyes to. So from your side, you've been a product manager for quite a while. How would you describe it? What is a product manager?
Yeah, that's always an interesting question, and everyone's got different ways to answer it. But if I were to, put one or two lines to it, I would like to say a product manager is responsible for creating a product that's valuable, usable, and feasible. So valuable to the users who are using it, and it might also to customers. So customers and users are different, right? Customers are people who pay for the product, and users are use the product. Also valuable for the organization creating it, because it needs to create value in terms of, okay, are we getting revenue from it? So valuable in that sense. Usable is that can the users use this? Does it solve their problem, and is it a solution that's usable for them? And that's where the designers come in play. And is it feasible? Is it from a technology perspective? Can we create this product in a way that creates value for the business and for customers and users? So in a nutshell, that's what I would say it is. It sounds very simplistic. But you take that, you take those two sentences and try and apply it within different organizations and what a product means within an organization. That's where the complexity lives. And then you need to understand what is the skill set you need within that context. So, yeah.
I like that. So technically, my title currently on my contract says project manager on it. So how would you differentiate explaining to people the difference between project and product management?
Yeah, there's a huge difference. Again, when I say product, I usually mean, just say you are a technology organization and you have a product, you have a piece of software they're selling to multiple clients. In the typical world, that's what a product means. So as part of it, right, you have to decide what to build. Right? And then you need to build it. And then you need to decide, okay, when I build it, this is the timeline, this is what we're going to release. So there's a small bit of project management. Project management is more about, okay, how are we going to release it? What are the timelines? What is the first release going to look like? Whereas product is primarily focused on what is the right product for the users and customers. How do we decide what to build?
Exactly.
What is the prioritization on that? And how our customers and users using it, and is it solving a problem for them? So huge difference. Project management is about managing the planning around it, the timelines, etc. And where the product person does a bit of project management or not depends on the frameworks that you adopt within an organization. So typically, we talk a lot about agile, and I know you've done a lot of agile podcasts probably as well. So in a typical agile world, you don't have a project manager. The role of a project manager is actually split between the Scrum Master and the product owner.
There we go.
In the typical Scrum sense, you have the product owner who plans the releases, decides, okay, this release we're going to release on this date. That's a bit of project management in there. But I wouldn't say it's their primary role as a product owner to do that. But if you're working with a small team, it does become part of your role. And in typical Scrum, in the Scrum theoretical framework, it does include quite a bit of project management, but that's not your primary role. As a product owner, your primary role is to build the right product for your users and customers.
I think the big thing there is that with software development in general, anything is possible. So anything can be built. There might be multiple problems you're trying to solve with a piece of software. So that's why I like how you broke it down into the what, the how, and the why. And I think that's why we play. So it's not just about here's a timeline, here's a fixed scope, and we need it done by this time. It's actually like going along the journey, and then how, what, why, how, what, why. And it's also that build, measure, learn kind of thing that we have to constantly do. So you started your own company called Nedrock. Can you tell me just sort of how that came to fruition, and what kind of excites you about what you're doing there?
Yeah, definitely. So Nedrock is 4 years old now. I started in 2016. And the reason why I started is, I think the journey towards Nedrock started before that. Is I started off as a software developer, and I worked primarily in enterprise software companies where very little emphasis on, we create great software, but can users use it, and how are they using it? Let's try and understand that. There was very little focus on it. So I transitioned into product management because I really was passionate about solving problems for customers and users, and I love technology. So how do you use technology to solve problems for customers and users? So I transitioned into product management, and I did work for various software companies, very strong tech-focused companies, as a product owner for 10 years. And then I realized, actually, there's not enough focus in the product management space. We need more product owners. We need to teach them the right skill sets to build the right product. And I started helping people during the weekends, after hours, helping them understand their role and what they need to do. And I realized, actually, there is a gap in the market, and there is value that I can add. And that's how in 2016, I started Nedrock. And it is interesting times, because I think in those 4 years, the role of product is getting better and better understood. We're still in the early stages, I feel, if you compare it to the US and UK markets, for example.
Yes.
But it really started off a little bit frustrated about, if you are a technology company and you are creating products, you need good product owners. You need to mentor them. You need to coach them. And it's not just about agile. There's a lot of agile coaching and things, but there's not enough emphasis on, hey, let's give this product owner the right skill set that they need to build the right product. So that's how Nedrock started.
No, I think it's fantastic. I completely agree with you. I've only been in product in the industry for a year and a half now, and I could go learn about Scrum and Agile and being a Scrum Master. There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of people talking. The community is very strong, but the product is just not. It's just not there. It's not as big. So very cool. I'm glad you're doing that. Because I do think that there is a shift to people understanding the importance of being a product owner or a product manager, that emphasis on the actual product, holding that vision and sending it through for the clients or the customers, whatever it is. So good work. You're also starting a Gibbs Business School course. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, I'm quite excited about that. So I do run product management training. And I've run some public courses, but during, I think, the last year, I'm doing a lot of in-house training, and I haven't had enough time to do public training. So what I thought about is, my first thing was, okay, how do we get more people into the product space? And I don't have enough time to do marketing, etc. So how do we get and coach and get great product owners out there? And so Gibbs was the course I'm running at Gibbs is one way to do it. It's a 2-day workshop focusing on the key aspects for fundamentals of product management. So starting right from, okay, how do you create a great vision? How do you build a strategy around that vision? And then how product discovery, which is very important, and then product delivery. So focusing on those key points. It's a 2-day workshop, and we're looking at running it online because of where we are now today. And I'm quite excited about it. And it's really a way to reach out to the bigger market and starting, okay, let's train up more product owners and product managers, and let's get organizations to understand what is this role about. Because even within organizations, there's so much confusion about, okay, what does this person have to do, and what is their primary role, and what is their responsibility? So during the consulting, I realized actually people don't understand that.
It's a mind shift that they need to make. It really is. It's like a misunderstanding. I get the feeling. And how's it been going? Do you feel like it's you've got the course coming, so that starts in November, right?
It's in November. It's 2 days in November. So yeah, it's on their website. You can go register on their website for it. And yeah, it's just 2 days. We're going to split it up into multiple, although 2 days, it's 16 hours, but it'll be across multiple days because it's all online. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about it. So if you want to learn about product management, it's a good opportunity to go sign up.
So like I said, we wanted to talk about customer interviews today. What are they? Let's start there. What are customer interviews? Let's start there.
Yeah, let's start there. So I talked about product discovery a bit. So how do you, when we talk about Agile, we talk about the product backlog, which is a list of features that the dev team is going to build. And how did those items end up in the backlog? That's the first question I usually start off with. How did you decide as a product owner, product manager, this is the highest priority items that the team needs to build? And in order to do that, to come up with that list, you need to interact with your users. And you need to understand their lives. And one mechanism of doing it is conducting customer interviews. So you need to go and understand, we call it qualitative research. Go and sit with your users and customers, understand their world, understand their pain points, understand where does their product fit in their lives. At what point do they start using your product, and then what problems does it solve for them? And that's where really customer interviews come. It's helping you build the right product. And what I found is, in my personal experience, is that when you go through Agile frameworks and Scrums, they talk about the backlog, and we get obsessed with the backlog and prioritizing it, but we don't talk enough about, okay, how do we get those items in the backlog, and how do you ensure that that is the highest priority items? And that's where customer interviews come into play. It's part of the product discovery skills. There's a number of skills you need to develop, and one of those is interviewing your customers. And I used to think, just go out there and do it. And I realized actually you need to actually do it in a certain way to get reliable answers. So if you are investing time doing it, let's do it the right way. And so if you look at UX people, they're generally looking at, okay, you've got a solution. Are the users using it the way you expected it? So some of the interviews are based on that, which kind of serves a different purpose, right? So if you think about it, they might have a prototype, and they're saying, okay, let's go interview a user and test that prototype. So in that case, you're actually testing a solution, right? And that's a specific kind of interview. But customer interviews, the ones I'm talking about specifically, is trying and understanding the world before you decide, okay, this is the solution for it. So I would say the UX people tend to come into play once you've got an idea of a solution and how do you test that solution. That's also a type of interviews. Either way, I think the product manager and the UX person need to work collaboratively on it. And in fact, I would say when I work with teams, it's the product owner or product manager. I mean, we can talk about that if we've got time, what the difference is. A UX person and a lead developer. These three people need to work hand in hand, three of them, and understand. I would encourage even the lead developer to actually sit in these interviews if possible, because if they understand the problem, they can come up with better solutions. And that's why it's and it comes to that feasible part is lead developers are good at solving problems, but they need to understand the problem, and this is where the problem space is, and this is where customer interviews come in.
Interesting concept. So I completely agree with you. I've brought it up on the podcast before. It's just watching when a dev or the lead dev and the UX or product owner or whoever's sitting around a table and making solutions. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And when they sync, it's unbelievable. So I completely agree. I passed a comment once, and I probably might get flack for it or not, but I actually said that a dev could be seen as a designer because they are helping design solutions. And so I felt that they need to be part of that conversation from as early as possible.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, that's not just the other one reason, right? So one is they can come, the other reason is they can give you an idea of, okay, these are the different ways to solve it, and this is how long each one is going to take. Right? And there's a cost implication in there. So this is going to take, actually, if we do it this way, it's going to take 1 month. If it's going to do it this way, this is the pros and cons, and this could take 2 weeks. and that's a huge difference.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's where I see the value. And the other thing is, what I like to do is also, those who are not keen to come for these sessions, is that you take videos or whatever mechanism, bring it back into the building and sharing it.
Okay.
Because then they can actually see, okay, I can see the value. I can see why this ends, So sharing a lot of the things that as a product manager you're learning outside the building, bring it back in and share it. It's very important. That's also very important. Share it with the team.
Yeah, I guess it empowers them and makes them feel they're part of the team, part of the solution. Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're kind of touching on the process of it. Do you have like a high level process to let our listeners know? Like, how would you go about setting up a customer interview?
Yeah, so I can share. Let me share quickly. So when you conduct the interviews, you need to be very purposeful and intentional about what you want to learn. Because if you go out there and just say, okay, I want to understand the customer's world, you're going to come back with different answers, and you will struggle to kind of get to a conclusion, if I can put it that way. And so you need to be very purposeful in terms of, I'm going to conduct a set of interviews, and this is what I want to learn. So I've split it up into research questions. Research question is all about, what do I want to learn, right? So let's look at an example. Everybody's buying masks these days, right? Bobby, I'm sure you've got a mask.
Yes,
you
of
better
course.
have.
Multiple.
So, yeah, exactly. Most of us have gone to multiple sources to get these masks, to try out different things.
Yeah.
So if I was someone who's very keen to start selling masks, I'm going to actually start a company, and I'm going to sell some designer masks online. I'm going to sell it online. So the first thing I would do is do some research around that. And the first thing I want to learn, for example, my research question is, how are people going about in deciding which mask to buy? That is your research question. So that is what I want to learn, right, from the interviews. I'm going to speak to different users or different people who are trying to buy these masks, different consumers. And my research question is, how are they going about deciding which mask to buy? Because masks are quite interesting. I mean, I've realized actually, you can't try it on, and you can't return it. So people, and so it's like, wow. Okay. So I mean, if you buy from Superbalist, you can return it. Most clothes you can return it, right? So now this is interesting. You've got this mask, and you can't. You've got to. People might be spending some time deciding how they're going to decide which ones to buy. Yeah. So my question is, that is my research question. Interview questions are, what we've learned, or what research actually shows, is that you don't want to go and ask your research question directly during customer interviews. You're going to less likely to get reliable answers. So what you need to do is translate your research questions into interview questions. And what are interview questions? So interview questions are the questions that we're actually going to ask to elicit stories that illustrate what we want to learn. So if we take the mask scenario, right? What I'm going to do is, I want to actually learn how people decide, okay, which mask am I going to buy? How do they go? What does that process look like? So I'm going to actually, my interview question is going to I'm thinking about, how do I get people to tell me a story about the past and how they went about deciding which mask to buy. So Bobby, I would come and ask you, Bobby, how did you decide? Tell me about the last time you bought a mask. Please walk me through that process. That is the question I'll ask you, because it will reflect on your past behavior. It will tell me about exactly what you did, right? And the reason why we do that, we translate research questions into interview questions, is that you are more likely to get truthful answers if you dig into past behavior, past human behavior.
Okay.
So, another example is, if you, Bobby, if you ask me, I know, how often do you go to gym? I'll probably say 3 days a week. And then if you ask me, how often, tell me about your last week. How many times did you actually go to gym? My answer would be very different.
Yeah.
It'd be very different. And the reason for this, it's all psychology, right? There's two reasons for this. One is that our brain just tends to give answers, not necessarily the right answers or truthful answers. And that's just the way it is. Not as humans, we want to lie about it. We tend to answer from the ideal me. the perfect, the ideal me, the perfect me. This is what I would like
The
to do.
Facebook me.
Yeah. Well, this is what I would like to do, but actually, the actual me is very different.
Yeah.
And it's not you or me. It's just human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is why your interview questions should be all about trying to get stories about their past, about what they actually did in their past, because that's what they're likely to do in the future. And you, as product owners and managers, we invest a lot of time doing this interviews. So I mean, as part of our coaching, what we do is you need to do 2 or 3 interviews a week, right?
Sure.
So that's a lot of time invested. So when you do these interviews, you're making decisions based on that. So you need to have good quality interviews. And that is why actually interviews do take a lot of time to prepare. You need to know what you want to learn, which is the research question. And you need to learn how to elicit stories to get the right answers that will lead you to make the right decisions. But I think what I want to highlight here is the difference between what you want to learn, and don't ask the question directly. I'm not going to ask you, Bobby, how do you go about buying masks? Tell me about it. Whereas I'm going to actually tell Bobby, tell me about the last time you bought a mask. And then as you tell that story, I'm going to dig in. I'm going to ask about if you missed. Oh, okay, you went to a website. All right. What did you look at on the website? Or you went to a friend, and then what did you ask your friend? So that is really about past behavior and how you actually behaved. And you're likely to get what actually happened versus what Bobby really wished that he did. So that is a real the difference between the research questions and interview questions. And we recommend that you speak to at least 10, 15 people, and you once you start seeing patterns, then you can say, okay, we're seeing something of value here. So interviews are hard work.
Yeah, it does. It's a lot of work. So one of the things I'm like, 3 to 4 interviews a week. That's a lot. How do you justify that to clients, or how do you justify doing that much interviews? To people that are sort of paying the bill, I guess.
Yeah. Again, that is why I think the context matters, right? So if you're in a business, you could be in a business where you're doing custom software development. So in terms of custom software development, you've got a client. The client comes to you with a piece of work they want done, and you're developing software for them, right? In that relationship, who decides what you want to build?
The client.
So the product persons probably should be ideally sitting maybe with the client. You need to realize in that relationship, you need to have a clear understanding of who understands the customers. Is that person sitting with the client, or is it sitting within your organization? If you're a custom software development company, do you say, okay, we've got someone within our organization who's going to play that role, but they actually need to understand your customers. So it really depends on how. Now, in a typical product technology company, right? And this is where, so let me give you an example of what I see as a typical product. We're looking at, like, Takealot, for example. Right? They're not outsourcing their software. They've got e-commerce, and they've got their product people sitting on site and it's part of their teams. Then they need to invest time doing their customer interviews. So as there's a head of product person, they're coaching their so as head of product, you're ensuring that all your product owners actually, it's part of their KPIs. They are actually doing it. If you understand, they need to make the right decisions. They need to be interviewing, and it's actually, are they interviewing 2 to 3 people a week? So that kind of organization is very different to the custom software development organization. And if you are a custom software development company, you need to decide with every project who is playing that product first. Is it the client or you? And then you need to actually explain to them, we could build the completely wrong piece of software, and your users might not engage with it, and it's because actually you're not giving them the right solution to the problem, or you haven't understood your problem enough, etc. It's a complex question, Bobby.
Yeah, sorry. No, it's interesting because I have not worked in an environment yet where they've valued these customer interactions at all. So kind of everybody sits in their little office or their little bubble and assume, or one person is meeting them. And I don't know, it's like you said, we spoke of the try. You've got your product developer, your software engineer, and your product and your UX all sitting in a room together. I don't see any of that happening. It doesn't feel like it's really understood yet. It's not really valued yet. But the more you realize, because then you'll build it and you'll release it, and then you'll only start realizing what they want. How much time have you spent doing that before you get the real value that the users or the customers are actually wanting or needing?
Yeah, and I think that is where that is where you waste a lot of money. And I've been down that line, Bobby. Like my first, when I was a developer, I worked 2 or 3 years on a product, and we worked on that product passionately, believing we understood what the client wanted. And we released after 3 years, and guess what? No one came and bought it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the frustration started for me. And I also work with local accelerator programs and entrepreneurs who are really passionate about the problem that they're solving, right? You feel like, I found this real problem and I know it's worth solving. Then I take them on a journey in terms of interacting with people and understanding, okay, in their world, how important is this problem to solve? And most often, it's actually not the most urgent problem to solve.
Yeah.
And you actually get it from the interviews. You start to get a sense of it. From running these interviews, you realize, actually, you know what? That didn't trigger anything in that person. Their body language, they do have that problem, but they've got bigger problems, which is a sign they're actually not probably going to buy your product.
Yeah.
So
good point.
Yeah. Next thing is what I like to talk about is when you conduct the interview. So we discussed quite a bit about how do you prepare the questions for the interview and how are you getting people to tell stories about their past. The next thing is when you sit in those interviews, right? As a product owner, product manager, listening. Very important skill is listening, right? And we talk about active listening. It's being there, wanting to listen. And interestingly enough, I've shared the slide on. There's a book called Active Listening, and we only remember 25 to 50% of what we hear. Okay. So and therefore, what is important is when you go there and do those interviews, you need to be there available and listening to what the users and possible consumers are speaking. And in this process, there's a few things. I'm actually going to stop sharing it now so that we can, And one thing here is that as product owners, you're actually rushing from one meeting to the another.
Yep.
And
is real.
in one meeting, and it's overwhelming. Maybe you've had very bad feedback on the last release, and it has taken a lot out of you. And before you head to the customer interview, you need to free your mind off that. You need to offload, relax, and make sure that you're ready, for the customer interview, and you're there to listen to them. And once the interview starts, you can't. It's best not to have any sort of bias in your head. Very often, when I conduct these interviews, I kind of sometimes think, okay, this is what they're going to say, and you have certain biases in your head. The idea is that you clear your head of all biases, and there's nothing right in your head. You're there to listen to customers and their viewpoints, and you've got one of your things. 2 pointers about active listening is that once they've answered your question, you can repeat back to them in your own words what you understood, and that kind of highlights, okay, you've actually listened to them. You've given them, you've been there to listen to them, and you've also actually, when you word it in another way, you've actually double checked that you've understood it correctly and you haven't misunderstood. So we say always parrot back what they said and confirm with them, is that what you meant? It's a good skill to have. And and the other thing is that also be very when you listen to them, don't interrupt them. Let there be a flow. Let them complete their sentences. In Agile, we talk about incremental and iterative development. So encourage the customer to think about, okay, if you want this feature, what is the smallest slice of that feature you can put out there to test, right? Because they're not allowing you to test before. So let's build it. Okay, let's take them on this journey. Let's encourage them to build the smaller slice. And then, okay, let's test this. Can you go and test this? Let's see if they're using it. And then you can start measuring. Ideally, then obviously you need something to put this measure, the product needs to be able to measure it firstly, and measure whether they're actually using it. And then they'll figure out actually, there's some issues here. So the suggestion I have is build something small and encourage them to actually, okay, are they using it the way you expected it?
There's a saying,
and then you'll see,
I always think that saying, what is the next biggest thing you want to learn about your users? So that talks that small bit, let's do some of it and let's learn from them next. So is that sort of what you're saying? Take that lean approach.
Yeah. Take the lean approach, because you do have resistance. If you do have resistance, like you're saying, you're waiting, and assume they're expecting you to build in the meantime. Put something small out there, and then, okay, are they using it or not? Then obviously they need to invest in time and understanding are they using it or not. Or you can put metrics, you can put analytics in the product itself, and then you've got data, right? You've got data, and you can show. You can see it's only 10% of them that are using it, and actually they're getting lost in that process. For example, they're not finishing the sign-up process, or they're not navigating through that whole process. Therefore, you're losing them. So there is a problem here.
And you want to
and the only way you can figure out, you need to uncover it. So the only way you can uncover it, you might find that 10% are only using it, but the only way to uncover the reason is actually engaging with them. So the data will give you the numbers. But and it's cost you XYZ to come this far.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think so it's putting the metrics in, the data in, so that they understand it, and then that's the best I think you can do when you are in custom in doing custom software.
So do you then test with the same people you did the interview with, or do you give it to a new batch of people?
So you can do it. So it's, again, you can do. So obviously it depends on how you're releasing and things like that. So ideally, if you've interviewed people, you can test it with them and see how that goes, and then test it with a group of users you haven't interviewed and see how they respond to it. So a mix and match will be good. But obviously, with the people you've interviewed, you've got a history and you can understand.
That's what I'm worrying about, the bias.
Yeah. So it's the thing is. Interviewing is one step, and then you need to test again when you've got the solution. And interviewing helps you make less mistakes, but it doesn't guarantee you're not going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So the risks are less, but there's no guarantee. Even then, you need to test and see actually are they behaving as you expected and as they said they might. And again, there's, like I said, there's problem interviews, the customer problem interviews, and then there's solution interviews, right? So along the way, you're including the user. So you've validated, okay, there is a problem, and then, okay, these are the solutions, and guess what? You don't have to build for that. You can prototype, right? That's what the UX people will help us with. We'll prototype, and they'll test the prototype, right? So that's usability testing. Right.
Yes.
That's another kind of process, and then you test it, right? And then you tweak the prototypes based on the feedback. You do 1 or 2 or 3 cycles around that, and then you build, and then you test again. So the idea is that you will make less expensive mistakes, and it's cheaper to change a prototype versus change code.
I think that's a selling point right there.
Yeah, it's cheaper. You can prototype. I can create it on a piece of paper. And I can change it in a few seconds. Whereas software, okay, all right, there's tests, there's code that I need to change, and then there's stories cycle. I need to, it's a whole cycle. It's actually going to wait for me for 3-4 weeks or whatever. That's the cost.
No, I think that's a great way to look at it.
And some people are resistant, but I think the cost, sometimes you've got to let them take a path, and sometimes they make an expensive mistake, but I promise you, after making expensive mistakes, then they're easier. It gets a bit easier to convince them.
But it really does talk to, I think, again, when we talk about the South African market, the product market, like maturing, I think we are slowly starting to really realize the importance of being user-centric and actually, that's why I wanted to have this interview today, was to push that agenda of need to get to know your users. I just don't think we do it enough. There's this nervousness that they're scared to do it. They're not confident to go and say, hey, will you do it? Or maybe they're just not aware of it. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like we need to start just opening up, getting our users involved as soon as possible.
Yeah. No, I think, Bobby, you're very right. So, I mean, obviously, I've been on this journey for 4 years, and I feel like now it's people understanding it better, that you do need to understand your users and customers. But it's still, sometimes it just feels it is a painful process, and sometimes people need to make they have to make expensive mistakes to understand this, which is quite sad.
It's like getting burnt to not do it again.
Yeah. And what I've realized also is that a lot of organizations are undergoing digital transformations, and in that process as well, they have to figure out, okay, we need to transform, we have to become more digital. And then they have to look at their roles and things, and then they need to understand, okay, then the product role becomes a little bit more significant. They look at other organizations that have transformed successfully and realize, actually, there is a product role there. And then you try and understand, what does that person do? And then they need to understand, okay, focus on the users and customers and things. But it is a journey. I'm not lying.
Yeah, it is. The mind, I think that there's inroads. So yeah. Let's keep fighting the fight.
Yes.
So to finish, you spoke earlier about you wanted to touch on the difference between a product owner and a product manager. So do you want to just give us a quick understanding of that, and then who should be sitting with these interviews?
Okay. Yeah. So the product owner, product manager. Differentiation. So the product owner role is specifically a Scrum role, right? Before Scrum, there wasn't product owner role. Product management existed before Scrum, though.
Okay.
So in Scrum, the product owner role is it's all about, okay, there's a product backlog. The product owner owns the backlog and owns the prioritization on that backlog. And it's very focused on the product delivery aspect, which is about, okay, there's coding, there's delivery, there's release cycles, and then and then we release to the customer. So it's all about what a backlog, prioritization, explaining that to the development team, make sure they ask the questions, and then they develop, and then testing it with customers. When we talk about a true tech company, so we're talking about a company like Superbalist, Sweep South. I'm thinking about some local examples. These are true technology companies where the product doesn't exist without the tech, right? In those organizations, the product needs to have a vision. It needs to be, you need to know where you're taking this in the next 4 or 5 years, and how does it change customers' lives? That's a big vision, right? It's exciting about how we're going to change this world when people engage with our product. And you need to have a strategy in terms of what are the steps to get to that vision? What is how are we going to get there in 4 or 5 years? When we talk about vision, we're talking about long term. It's in the next 4 or 5 years, and it's the why. Why are we going to make a dent in this universe? It's that Steve Jobs thing. And that is amazing, because when you come up with a great vision, right? People come or join your organization because they're passionate about the problem that you're solving.
Yes, exactly.
Right? It's a recruitment thing as well. And a true tech company will have a product that has a vision, and you have a plan about how you're going to get to that vision. Scrum doesn't talk about that.
No.
And that is where the product management includes the vision, the strategy, and also the delivery, right? And one of my things about Scrum and Agile is it doesn't have the whole product management, all the activities to take a successful idea to market.
Yeah.
And product management is the scope is bigger. It's all about the vision, the strategy. What is the problem that we're solving? How is our organization going to make money from this? Very important.
Mm.
What is the business model behind this product, right? How is the organization going to make money, and who are the different stakeholders within the organization as a product person that you're going to have to interact with and get their buy-in? Everything is driven off that product, and it's a product-led organization. So a typical product management role encompasses all of these things, and some parts. The product owner is the tactical part, which is the small part of product management.
So it's product
in a
management is like the entrepreneur that kind of looks over the business. So it sounds like it's a little bit more business orientated than just sort of delivery. If that's a way to summarize it.
Yeah. Yes, it's business focused. You need to ensure there is value creation for the users and your organization. You need to understand business model, stakeholders within your organization, vision, strategy, and execution. Whereas product owner role is only focused on the execution side. And in a true tech company where you own a product, technology product, and take it into market, product management is important. You need to have the right skill sets. So if you're working in a custom software development company, that you would hope that product management, if it is a software product that your client's taking to market, you're hoping that product management skill set lives within your client. If it isn't, it's a problem, because you know what ends up happening is you end up building software that might not meet people's users' needs, and then 1 year down the line they'll be looking at you and saying we wasted money. That's not where you want to be, right?
No, exactly. And I think that's exactly why I'm doing these podcasts, and I've kept it local based, is because I want to help. I think you had to struggle to think about local products. You were like a Superbalist and Sweep South, and it's like, come guys, let's make some awesome products out there. And so we need to understand that, and so we don't go down rabbit holes, and let's build some awesome stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, like, I interact with different types of clients. I interact with clients who build software for internal use. And then you need to think about what does product ownership mean in that kind of organization and the context. And that's why I always say that the role depends on your context. So I'm not going to sell a big vision and strategy necessarily as much for an organization where you're creating internal software. Then let's define that role for you, and it's part of the work. It's a different it's part of then let's define that what the role is supposed to be within your organization. So it depends on the context. So that is the product management. The product management is huge, and it's actually, if you're thinking about hiring a product manager, you need to hire a strong product manager, because they are making the decision on, this is a product we want to build, which is actually generating income for the company. So let's train those people, let's mentor those people. And probably the sad thing is, locally what I find is most product owners and managers their managers don't have the skill set to mentor and train them, because they've never done that. And that's another one of my frustration points, is that the product owners and product managers locally, they often struggle to look up for training or coaching or mentorship, because the people who they're reporting to don't have that skill set, because they never did it before. So that's it's just, I thought I'd highlight it.
No, but I know this is exactly why I'm doing this podcast, is I'm trying to help people get the knowledge. This is meant to help them start understanding what it all entails, because being a product manager, and there's so many different elements to it that you have to do. And in previous things, we talked about being the conductor, the symphony, and you need to understand all of those elements to be a successful product manager or product owner. And I do feel that they don't understand it. We've learned now everyone's going agile. Cool. There's Scrum Master. Oh, there's a product owner. But okay, there's Scrum Master. But there's a product owner. Okay, but what does a product owner do? I don't know. Okay, so there's a lot of knowledge gaps out there. Absolutely.
And I've been in a lot of Scrum teams, and my biggest frustration has been that you often work with a Scrum team with at least 10 developers and one product owner, and the Scrum Master will always spend time getting the development team's issues sorted, and the product owner gets neglected. So there's one person there, and the problems and the noise is coming from the development team. So that's where the Scrum Master or the coach is focusing on. And again, I think there is a big thing to be said in terms of, you can coach. This is what a product owner is supposed to be in a typical Scrum environment, but most Agile coaches don't have that experience being a product owner. And therefore, they transferring the kind of skill set that they need from coming from Agile, because it's almost, you can't expect them to, because they know what a product owner should be doing, but how do you, for example, train a product owner to make the right decisions of what needs to be in the backlog?
How do you understand value? How do you generate? How do you get? And
and in Agile coach, there's two things. One is there's so many fires happening in the development team. They're trying to coach that versus they don't have time for the product owner, or they don't have experience doing it. So that's why a lot of what I'm seeing more and more is in big enterprise kind of transformations, you need both an Agile coach and a product coach working hand in hand collaboratively, growing the team members.
Yeah, I think the key also is getting experience as soon as possible. I want to get people into the role as soon as possible so that they can start learning. It's the best way. But obviously, so that's great. So you've got the course coming on, and I'm guessing it's going to cover this whole thing, everything we've just spoken about.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's a 2-day course. So we do a lot of practicing and also a bit of theory. But again, training 2 days, you can get the fundamentals going and execute, practicing all that within your organization, the context, and it also, you can take it one step further. But it's, again, often coaching helps together with that. Because within your context, like I said, every organization is different, and that role is different.
Yeah, that's I think one of the final takeaways is when you get experience, you understand those situations better. So when you do these courses, it's that whole teach someone to fish, because you'll get I need to use that now. Okay, cool. I'm going to go unpack that, and I need to use it in this situation. Oh wait, here's the next thing. I'm now in this situation. Now I need to use that. So very important to get that training.
But I mean, Bobby, the thing is, locally, like you said, it's like people don't get it. So here's the thing. But I think when I started 4 years ago, there was nothing. I mean, there was basically I had to do hours of education about why this is important and why you need it. But I think we're in a much better space now. Even if you search product owner jobs, there's a lot more than 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But I just still think that people who put in those roles, they're not set up for success. You just put someone in and you make a business analyst, a product owner, and you don't just become a product owner.
No.
How do you then train that person? That is where it falls apart for me. And then it's all about, Scrum is wrong, or that person didn't do their job. But the question is, did you train and spend the time to make does your organization understand what they need to do?
Exactly. Because you know what they do? They go to a job spec, copy and paste. Okay, we're going to hire that, and we're going to just get that job spec to kind of give us our compass.
Yeah.
I've literally been involved in that. It's dangerous.
And so that's the thing I always say when I coach product owners as well. You need to make sure when you go for the interview, they understand what you need to do. If you don't do that and you go into a position like that, you're set up for failure. Don't set up yourself up for failure. You need to interview them and and see if they understand what you need to do. Otherwise, their expectation, what are they expecting from you? And they can blame you for failure, which is actually their failure. So don't set up yourself. I mean, I've been through some difficult scenarios, and that's coming from experience and things like that. So you've got to interview them and make sure they understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I feel just even at my own company, how I'm having to, as I'm learning and figuring, I'm like teaching them as I'm going along. I'm like, hey, but there's a gap here. No one's filling this gap. How can we work together in filling this gap? And it's an education thing. So letting the clients know that there's a gap, and then how do we address the gap, and who's the right person for the gap?
So I've worked with some custom software development companies, and usually what happens there is that the way I've worked with them is that a client comes to you and they've got this wonderful idea and they want development. And then one client I've worked with, they kind of understand the product space, and they will say, listen, your idea is great, but you don't know if it's going to make money. So you can spend money on us. You can come and we'll develop it for you, but there's a good chance it will fail. So guess, you know what? Go to Annu, and then you'll go on a journey. You'll go do some customer interview, understand your customers first. Go do that journey first. Understand exactly what your business model and what problem you're solving, and then you come to us. So that's the kind of bit. So then I work with them, and they do the customer interviews. I do a workshop on customer interviews. This is how you should do it. And sometimes I sit in with one of those interviews. We record the interviews so that we do a debrief after that. And then they go do the interviews, which is fine, which is great. And then they bring the insights back, and then we decide, okay, actually, you know what? There's nothing in here. We need to actually throw this idea out. You know what I mean? So it's like...
But that's good though. Then you're not spending millions of rand, because developing is expensive.
Exactly. So, and then because otherwise what happens is this software house goes and develops it, and then it's a dispute between them and the client in terms of, oh, you were so expensive, and you know, you took all our money, and then it's totally...
The roadmap is all wrong because look at all these things that had to change. But
but then the client, that software house understands the importance of product, and that's why they do that, right? But the thing is, like, some custom software companies, they make money that way, and for them, they don't care, actually. You know what I mean? That's why I didn't want to go into that. And they make money, so they're like, okay, it's fine. Now we'll do that development, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not ours.
No, we need to move away from that. We need to make sure that we're building awesome products for people.
Yeah, I know. So.
No.
So but there's a few of us fighting the fight.
Yeah, let's keep going, soldiering on, eh? But anyways, thank you so much, Annu. It's been great chatting to you. I think that just the whole subject that we've had in total is so much to unpack. But thank you so much for coming in, and I hope the viewers have learned something. But thank you for taking the time and sharing your insights with us.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, Bobby. And I look forward to your future podcasts as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.